The January 6th insurrection left quite the digital paper trail, but when you post and tweet and text and Instagram Live your criminal activity, well, that has consequences. It also has benefits, at least for the January 6th committee's investigation.
This was not only the only violent insurrection to take place at the Capitol of the United States against Congress and against the Vice President, but it was also perhaps the most documented episode of political violence and assault on democracy in our history.
New reporting from the Washington Post is giving us the most comprehensive look yet at the days leading up to and following the deadly riot, piecing together the insurrection one text at a time. Perhaps the most striking revelation is the drastic distinction between what was said in private and in public. Just look at these messages from a member of the Conservative Freedom Caucus to Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Quote, "If POTUS allows this to occur, we're driving a stake in the heart of the Federal Republic," end quote. That text was sent on January 1st, just 5 days before the riot. This might be a good time to remind you. 139 out of 221 House Republicans, almost two-thirds of the conference, voted to overturn the election after rioters stormed the Capitol. Should we take a wild guess at which camp that unidentified conservative member ended up in? On January 7th, Fox host Sean Hannity wrote to White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany with a 5-point post-coup plan, including, quote, "no more stolen election talk." Of course, we don't need to tell you that he didn't take his own advice, only doubling down and tripling down on Trump's big lie and defending the insurrectionists. Beyond the hypocrisy, one January 6th committee member tells the Post that these messages are key to their investigation because they highlight the players behind the events leading up to the riot and what they had planned. The Post report exposes Mark Meadows' communication with shady characters involved in the coup, like Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe, who texted Meadows about voter fraud lies in Georgia churches, and Cleta Mitchell, a conservative lawyer who helped lead Trump's fight to overturn the election results in Georgia. One thing's for certain, the texts we've seen so far are just the tip of the iceberg. As the Post notes, the committee has publicly revealed only a fraction of the thousands of text messages it has received so far. Let's bring in tonight's panel. Jill Wine-Banks is a former Watergate prosecutor and co-host of the Sisters-in-Law podcast, which is a pretty cool podcast, folks. Maya Wiley is a civil rights attorney and former assistant U.S. attorney, and lucky for us, they're both MSNBC legal analysts. Welcome, ladies. So, Maya, let's begin with you. Talk to us about where the committee stands right now, what its game plan looks like. Talk us through what that plan looks like in their releasing the texts that we have seen so far publicly.
I think what we're seeing, Michael, is a continuation of what has been a very intentional strategy of queuing up for the public the story that has been unfolding in the over 500 witnesses and all the documents that they have pulled together to this point. And we know that's a lot. We also know that they were also getting closer and closer directly to Donald Trump himself because they had subpoenaed folks like Mark Meadows and have actually had to move to compel that testimony. But, I think what they're really gearing up for is the fact that they need to have public hearings about what they're finding, and that this is a way of continually showing the American public not only how, in a transparent way, the investigation is unfolding, but that it's unfolding based on facts. And that what we're seeing is the facts that start to paint the picture that you may be hearing a lot of things from Donald Trump and you may be hearing a lot of things from Republicans. But let's just tell you that we're hearing and seeing some things that go directly counter to what you are. And that really is one of the roles of the committee, is is obviously directly to say, what do we need to change about what we do and how we do it in order to protect our democracy? But it's also to identify for the American public, what actually happened, so the public can make its own decisions about what happened and what decisions the public wants to make about who leads them.
Jill, Maya makes a very interesting point, particularly when you consider that one of the earliest texts that were released is from a cell phone linked to former Texas Governor and Trump Energy Secretary Rick Perry on November 4th, before the election was officially called. He texted Meadows with his own aggressive strategy to overturn the election. What's the significance there? I mean, we're talking before the election. Does that go to planning? Does that go to actions of forethought, as they like to say in the law? What's your interpretation of that?
It goes to both. And I agree with everything that Maya said in terms of this being a way to get the story to the public by releasing all of these text messages. The public is being informed as the evidence is unfolding. And let me just tell you, as a criminal prosecutor, this is a prosecutor's dream to have this kind of evidence. It's much more dramatic than just having cold testimony. This is what was happening as things were developing. And it's going to show the people what planning happened, and certainly having a discussion about overturning the election before the election is part of knowing that you're going to lose and planning for how you're going to overturn the people's will in voting. So this is really important politically. It's important legally. It will be used in a courtroom, and it will be dramatic testimony. And we only have the tip of the iceberg right now. So I'm looking forward to getting the rest of these, which do, as you noted, Michael, it shows total hypocrisy. They said one thing in their emails, knowing what was going on and how bad it was and what a threat to democracy it was. And then they went on television and said, there's nothing here, folks. It's nothing. They are just tourists visiting the Capitol.
Maya, I want to play for you a little bit more of what January 6th committee member Congressman Jamie Raskin told Ali Velshi this morning. Take a listen.
I've seen the Fifth Amendment privilege asserted more in the last month than I can believe. I probably heard the Fifth Amendment mentioned more than the First Amendment in my lifetime now, with all of the people asserting the Fifth. But we're interested in protecting the rest of the Constitution. We're going to protect their Fifth Amendment rights, too, if they're legitimately exercised.
Here's the rub, Maya. Can the committee get all the information they need when it seems like everybody's out there either defying and delaying those subpoenas or showing up and pleading the Fifth?
Well, I think the short answer is they're getting it, and we're seeing it. And the reason is exactly what you laid out at the beginning, Michael, is there's a paper trail. It's really tough for prosecutors, to Jill's point about why this is looking better and better for the committee, is because prosecutors often don't have documents. And in an absence of documents, it's much more difficult to build a case. But here, the fact that they have had, so many witnesses cooperate, we should not forget that. And sometimes it's the folks who were in the room, who weren't the top dogs, that are the ones that know more, have more, and they have been cooperating. I think it's not surprising that the folks closest to Donald Trump are also the ones most concerned about not talking. But I want to go back to one of the other things about that text message you read to Jill is, one of the things it shows, in addition to the fact that there was planning, is it suggests indirectly what Donald Trump's state of mind is. So even if you don't have Donald Trump's testimony, what you do have is the inference that all these people were screaming, stop, get out there, stop it, tell them no. And that, as we've heard from the committee already and powerfully, Donald Trump sat there enjoying what he was watching on television. And as we've just heard from a federal judge, the civil lawsuit that folks like Congressman Benny Thompson and Congressman Eric Swalwell and Capitol police officers have brought for damages against Donald Trump are going to go forward, and he will have to sit for deposition in those cases.
Ladies, you know how to open up the conversation. Jill Wine-Banks, thank you very much. Maya, I'd like you to stick around for a little bit. There's a little bit more I want to grill you on. Next, President Biden held an emergency meeting with the National Security Council to discuss the Russian invasion threat to Ukraine. Congressman David Cicilline will join us. Plus, should January 6th insurrectionists receive lighter sentences if they cooperate with congressional investigators?